Well, good evening, everybody. It is Hump Day Happy Hour on Dentist in the Know. I am Chad Duplantis, and this young lady to the left of me is Dr. Jennifer Bell.
So obviously, big weekend coming off of the AGD. There was policies and procedures that were tweaked while we were there. Nothing too earth-shattering, but always fun to tighten up the bureaucracy of any organized dental group and make sure we're continuing to run efficiently and lean. So that was good. But let's talk about what's going on in the news out there in the world. I was really inspired to see a news story just recently that came out about some research that's happening at UCLA about topical treatment for bisphosphonate necrosis of the jaw. As most clinicians know, this is a really difficult condition to treat. It is a condition that is brought on oftentimes by injection and oral bisphosphonate use for osteoporosis, but also for prevention or treatment of metastatic cancers, particularly breast and multiple myeloma. And when these cases come in your practice, you're sort of befuddled and really challenged to try to come up with treatment options to alleviate the discomfort for the patient and to find resolution. Some patients have pain, some patients don't, but as a clinician, we always want to be able to provide answers. And still to date, dentistry hasn't really come up with a solidified technique that is proven that will work for every patient that you may encounter that develops necrosis of the jaw as a result of bisphosphonate use after treatment or spontaneously. Well, UCLA's dental school and a few folks there have come up with a topical treatment which they think may be very promising, that you can use during surgical treatment. Not sure it would work as well for spontaneous, but maybe so. Once it pops up, maybe you can topically treat that as well and preventatively treat your surgical sites with topical medication. But it showed a lot of promise in their early studies with mice that gave resolution for those particular lesions. So now they're moving forward with the FDA approval on that potential drug. I also saw in that news article, it was really interesting. I did not realize that there had been some litigation also to the pharmaceutical companies for that particular drug, and a 15-year drop year over year of the use of that drug for both treatment for osteoporosis and for metastatic cancers. So it'll be interesting to see how these two sort of marry up together. Maybe once we're able to manage the side effect, the actual value of the drugs will be able to be fully realized, because they've also seen an increase again of bone fractures, hip fractures, etc., as the use of the medication has tapered over time. So really happy to see science doing what science is supposed to be doing and continue to investigate and find answers to challenges and complications within the dental practice. For those of you who live in the state of Arkansas, who always wanted to have a dental school that you could go to in your own state, but had to travel elsewhere, it looks like a new dental school is coming your way. I believe there's less than 10 states now in the US that do not have their own dental school. A good majority of them are in close proximity to other states that do have a dental school, but Arkansas was not quite as fortunate. So it looks like they're teaming up to bring in a dental school for their community. So we'll continue to watch that. That's obviously a trend that is growing throughout the United States of opening new dental schools. I do have some concern about what happened in the 1980s, where we had this onslaught of new dental schools that opened up, and subsequently many of them ended up closing when we had more dentists than we had jobs to fill. So we'll see how this trend continues. But always good to see states that do not have dental school education starting to be able to offer something to their citizens. There was an effort by the Medicare and Medicaid programs just recently, really focusing in on pregnancy and pregnant patients getting access to dental care. It looks like this is going to be a pretty big hot topic for all 50 states to be looking at opportunities to get pregnant patients into the dental office during those time periods, and also for a certain time period after in postpartum. And the DQA Dental Quality Alliance is also looking at this as well. And I think all these different groups are trying to figure out how to optimize dental care and oral health care support for pregnant for pregnant patients to ensure optimal outcome for those babies, and also providing them support postpartum as well. So we'll see what that means for government programming to incentivize doctors to start opening the doors to pregnant patients. But also, I would say this could be very good for oral education for patients seeking care at OBGYNs to ensure that all pregnant patients have some plan in place to seek oral care during their pregnancy. We know there's connection with periodontal disease and preterm birth and low birth weights. It's also unhealthy from an inflammatory response for the pregnant patient. And so it's really good to see that maybe we're going to start having some inroads with educating those pregnant patients to include oral health care as part of their prenatal support while they're growing that little baby. So happy to see that as well. Lastly, I was really pleased to see that under the new president, Dr. George Shepley for the ADA, they're moving forward with a program, an ambassador program for wellness. They just started their training in November. These doctors are taking on the onerous task of being an ally and a support system for our doctors who are struggling out there with mental health issues and challenges. We know based on statistics that those challenges have increased pretty significantly since COVID during post-pandemic, also with the economic challenges we're currently facing. We know that dental health professionals in general have always had a higher statistical average for struggling with mental health and well-being. And then you add COVID and other economic challenges that have come since that, and the numbers are continuing to increase. So I'm happy to see that the ADA is responding in a positive fashion to provide a support system for our colleagues out there that need help. There's more data that will be coming out over the next couple of months on how you can access and reach these individuals. They will not be therapists and they will not be providing clinical support. They will be a listening ear and then also starting to make those connections for our dental colleagues with other professionals to seek the help and care they need. But I'm really happy to see that the ADA is recognizing mental health issues within our profession and starting to move forward with positive change to give our colleagues the help that they need. With that, that's the news.
Okay, osteoradionecrosis, topical treatment. Let's go back to that for just a second.
Okay.
What was the drug?
It is a combination. Can you give me just 1 second and I'll pull it up for you? Hold on. Do you want to do the bio for our speaker tonight? And I will have an answer for you.
We can come back to it later. I was just curious because I think that's always fascinated me. But yeah, I would be glad to introduce our speaker. So our speaker tonight is a really interesting person. When I started reading his bio, I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. So our speaker tonight is Dr. Greg Grobmyer. He practiced clinical dentistry in Tennessee for over a decade. And then he had a battle with cancer and chemotherapy left him with numb fingers. So he was unable to practice dentistry anymore. So I titled this, visit tonight, if you will, pivot, because, there's so many of us that have to pivot, but he really did a great job of doing so and began lecturing, coaching dental offices based upon the experience and knowledge that he derived from working with multiple practice consultants over the years and started working with practices doing the same thing. He's written numerous dental publications. Outside of dentistry, he's appeared in Reader's Digest, Men's Health, Slate, New York Magazine, Insider Magazine, and many others. He also spent a little bit of time moonlighting in stand-up comedy. But currently, he is the chief editor of Practice Booster's Insurance Solutions newsletter, editor of the annual Coding with Confidence dental reference books, host of the Dental Code Advisor podcast with Dr. Charles Blair, an instructor for Dental Zing webinars, and nationally featured speaker on dental coding and administration, helping dentimize maximize, I love this word, their legitimate insurance reimbursement. And I think that's something that we can all benefit from is insurance reimbursement. So it's an honor to have Dr. Grobmyer here. Greg, welcome.
Thank you. That's quite an intro between the now
You
I
wrote
have
it,
to
man.
follow the 60 minutes
Jesus.
episode of the bagel love triangle, and then talk of oral cancer and mental health problems. So, and then there's me. So we're going to talk about some dental coding and life transitions and everything else. And I did have to pivot. It was a big deal,
Yeah.
completely new direction that it took me. But here I am, and I'm happy to be here speaking with you guys this evening.
So let's go back just a little bit because I'm interested to find this out. When did you graduate dental school?
99 came out
Hey.
of UT. And oddly enough, I'm from Arkansas.
Okay.
Couldn't go to school in Arkansas. Went across the bridge, Memphis, University of Tennessee Health Science Center there. So came out just before the turn of the century. So been in dentistry for a little over 20 years, practiced for a little over a decade clinically before getting off on all this other stuff, practice management and writing, and now coding. And so it's been a long and winding road. But
so are you from Little Rock?
No, I'm from Eastern Arkansas, Forest City, Arkansas.
Okay.
It's just right on the interstate as you're going across kind of the more flat, boring part of Arkansas. It's beautiful. In parts of it where I was from, it's mainly rice fields and, that kind of thing, pretty flat Mississippi Delta country. But it was great growing up there, and was happy to be able to launch my dental career there. I've been slowly moving east. I went to Memphis, and then I had private practice in West Tennessee and Jackson, Tennessee area. And then now I'm up on Signal Mountain right outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee. So and slowly working my way east.
Won't be long before he's in North Carolina. He
Yeah.
just
All
over into
give me
it.
time. We'll be over there. I'll be knocking.
I don't
on the
know.
door.
If you get to Tennessee, you usually stay. I'm a little jealous. So you practiced for 10 years, and then you are diagnosed with, was it colon cancer? I think you said
colon cancer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went into my doc actually talking about acid reflux. I had no signs, symptoms, nothing, no family history, nothing. I'm 36 years old, and I go in and talking about acid reflux. They did some blood work. They found out I was anemic. They assumed I had an ulcer, so a bleeding ulcer So they did a upper GI scope, didn't see anything, pressed me forward to colonoscopy. So I went under, I woke up, and they said, Greg, we found a mass. It's big. We don't even have to wait on pathology. Would you like to have it taken out right now? So literally they had some surgeon just bored waiting in the break room, with nothing to do. So they came back in. I went right back under. I was already, to avoid the prep one more time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They put me under, took out the entire right side of my guts. So, I tell people I just now have a semicolon, but moving forward, I had to figure out something else to do. Doing the chemotherapy, like I said, it left me with peripheral neuropathy. I've got numb fingers, numb feet. Nobody likes to go to a dentist that drops stuff all the time. So I had to kind of figure out a different direction. And I'd been working with several different practice management companies as a client for a decade. And so it was kind of a natural pivot for me to be able to go to the other side of that. I was pretty well acquainted with all their materials and had been doing it for a long time. So did that for about 5 years, ended up getting bought out by one of my partners, which freed me up to kind of get into more of the industry writing thing. I've been doing that for quite a few years now. And like you said, I've had a good run with that. But Dr. Charles Blair, the GOAT of dental coding, was looking for someone to take over the Insurance Solutions newsletter and work with that. So I entered in as the editor of that newsletter. And since then, it's just grown. It's just Dr. Blair is an amazing man. He is 80 years old. He is still working 8 to 5 every day at Practice Booster, working on different dental coding topics, doing webinars, doing everything that he can, but he can't travel anymore. So I've taken over his speaking engagements. They've got me on the road going around talking to different people and giving the lectures that he once did. I work with him on the Coding with Confidence manual that's in a whole lot of dental offices across the country. And so we edit that and we update that absolutely every single year, digging through that. And we've got 5 different books now. We got 2 more launching this year. And so that are new publications. And so it's a big job. It's a whole new direction from where I was, but I love it. I enjoy it thoroughly.
That's awesome. And I mean, you were on the forefront of all the changes. So, one of the questions I want to ask you is what kind of changes are you seeing? But the other question, the first part of that question is how do you stay on top of the changes? How do you know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen? That's something that, obviously,
Right.
maybe it's not a secret you want to get out, but
No.
that's a tough job.
There's no secret to it. And as a matter of fact, it's something I wish more people knew. The ADA is responsible for the whole CDT code set, as you know.
Sure.
Well, every single March, they have a meeting of what they call their Code Maintenance Committee. Code Maintenance Committee has 26 members. It's got 5 are from the ADA, including the chair. They've got somebody there from each of the 12 dental specialty organizations. And they've also got a lot of people from the payer side. So Delta Dental's got a person there. Blue Cross Blue Shield has got a person there. NADP has a person there. They've all got representation. And so every March they meet and they go over the proposed changes to the CDT. Now, those proposals actually come from viewers like you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that just they are working on and deciding that they're needing the changes. This is open to anyone. You don't even have to be an ADA member. You don't even have to be in dentistry, frankly. But if you go to ADA's website and look up the Code Maintenance Committee, you'll find it. If there's a particular service or procedure that you've been doing in your office, you've been having to 999 that procedure because there's not a good code for it, it may be something you want to propose. And so there's a link on the ada.org website. If you hunt it up, you can find it. And if you get in your proposal before November the 1st, they will be looking at it by March when they meet in Chicago and they have their big meeting. And so they'll bring up these proposals. They'll, some are yay, some are nay. It's just a thumbs up, thumbs down kind of vote. And if it passes, then it's added into the next year's CDT code. And so these changes happen. They're voted on in March. We usually see them within a month or so. We leave the meeting knowing what got accepted and what got denied, but we don't know the details about it for a little while. And so we work with ADA very closely because we want to make sure that's their codes. They're ultimately responsible for not only producing them, but also for the interpretation of them. And so we create a product that expands and explains a lot more than ADA is really able to do, because they can't name products by name and they can't really talk about the payer side of things so much. They're there for the documentation purposes, for the coding purposes. And so they put out the CDT book, which is, 150 pages. They also have a great book that they put out that's the Coding Companion, which is a lot of Q&As. Wonderful. We go to that. We want to make sure that everything that we are putting out is in alignment with that. And so we take that and then we expand upon it. And we talk, we work with payers, we work with ADA, we talk to all the people that are going to be involved in this thing and figure out how is this going to be received? How do you think it's going to be reimbursed? What do you need for documentation? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the common mistakes and errors, miscodings that happen frequently? So we're looking at all that and we're trying to create, we put out the one coding book is 550 pages. That's the one that a lot of people have. We also have an admin book and we've got a medical dental cross coding book, which is like yay thick.
It's so big.
You can use it as a doorstop. It's enormous.
Yeah.
And it's getting a big rewrite coming up real soon too. And then we've got a documentation and a technology book that we're putting out this coming year. And so hope you look for those. But that's the story behind the codes. And so we're constantly on the phone or email talking to the people at ADA, just kind of saying, now, what did you mean by this?
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of interpretation that goes on in the language there. They put out the nomenclature and the descriptors and the numbers, but we have to figure out what that means. And we also have to figure out on the payer side how that's going to be used. So
Greg, in the AGD, I serve on the Dental Practice Council, and the AGD does have a seat at the table for the coding maintenance
they
committee
do.
as well.
Yeah. I was just on the AGD podcast. I was
Yeah.
a guest there recently.
And we go through all those proposed changes, yay or nay, and how the impact will be for general dentists, and participate in that. So I am at least knowledgeable about what that really looks like. But what will be interesting, and I think is at least worth discussing, is that the modifiers, the whole new direction that the coding committee wants to go, and where they're trying to, in some ways I can appreciate, get more granular in what we're doing as dentists, and I would like to think reimburse adequately based on the services we're providing. Maybe not. That's always up to interpretation, but it definitely, for me as a layperson, is starting to look more and more like medical. So
Absolutely.
what do you think?
It absolutely is looking more and more like medical. And so the ADA is calling it the enhanced code set. I'm calling it job security because I think it's going to be, it's going to take a while for this to really get integrated. And
Do you think they were worried the ICD was going to just take them over?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, but I do know that this has been in the works for a while. They've been talking about this for a number of years, and it's still a 3 to 5 year plan. I don't know that it's going to just instantly happen. It's not going to be a light switch flip kind of change, because not only are dentists going to have to figure out how to use these modifiers, it's also going to affect every single practice management software, all these different insurance clearinghouses that are out there. They're all going to have to completely rework their softwares to be able to accommodate all this. It's a big deal. It's a big change. And what Jennifer's talking about, JB, is that what we call you?
Yes.
JB.
Yeah.
Okay. So what JB's talking about here is they are discussing continuing to use the 5-digit alphanumeric code that's right now. So you've got D1110, for a prophy, but now, much like medical CPT codes, they're going to be putting modifiers at the end of this. And so you'll have your 5-digit alphanumeric code, but then it'll be a dot blank blank, 2 numbers after it. And there's going to be up to, I believe it said 4 modifiers for any particular code on a given procedure. So you're going to have a modifier for what material you used, and you're going to have a modifier perhaps for if you did it with the laser, if you did it with a handpiece. You're going to have a modifier for, was this, done this way or done that way. And I'm not sure what all they're doing, but they're trying to get granular, as they call it, with their data. Now, this helps them really get a better idea of how boots on the ground dentists are actually doing dentistry. Now, how that's going to come out on the payer side remains to be seen, because currently, if you do a all porcelain crown, that could be, or something that's coded as an all porcelain crown, that could be anything from, a zirconia, a porcelain stack type crown, or that could be a full resin crown, or coming next year with one of the changes, it could be a 3D printed porcelain restoration. That's a change that's coming in 2023. And so how that crown is fabricated is not something you're currently reporting. With the modifiers, you will be. And so how that will affect payers, that remains to be seen. Will they reimburse different fabrication methods in different ways?
Well, and can I put my tinfoil hat on for just a minute to say that the
Absolutely.
conspiracy of that would be, as they collect more and more data, they'll reimburse for certain ways things are done. Let's say
Mhm.
I print uh, some random material and we get that detailed about it. And then they have 100 dentists that also submit the same information and 60% of them fail. Then all of a sudden, because they're seeing that repeat submission within a 5 year or right at that 5 year mark, that crown has to be replaced again versus the 3D printed crown that seems to last 10 years versus the milled crown that seems to last 20 versus the gold that seems to last 40. Like all of a sudden, do you start to see,
Exactly. So they're seeing what type of bonding
yeah,
agent are you using? They're seeing what type of material are you placing? And so that's information that currently they're not gathering.
right,
And so I understand the purpose behind the change,
correct.
and hopefully it will drive dentistry towards longer lasting, higher quality
Yeah.
restorations and things being properly reimbursed. But it has yet, we have yet to see it. We don't know yet. We don't know how that's going to be affected. And it's going to be plan dependent. And so, I always say whatever is in the contract that you signed is what they're going to reimburse for. So if you've agreed to sign, a contract that says they'll only pay for a crown if it's blue, then that's what you've signed. And they're only going to pay for Bluetooth. So from then on, I mean, what's in the contract is what you've agreed to, and that's that.
My
And
biggest
so,
concern is that they're going to do the same mess that they do now, where all posterior restorations potentially are downgraded to an amalgam. Well, then all crowns are downgraded to whatever they're in, whatever the lowest common denominator
it's
of
called
that
the least
particular material
expensive
is.
alternative.
And then
treatment.
you start
The
having
least-
to have a la carte conversations with patients about, well, I want to do this because my insurance company pays me more if I do this particular, where now at least that clinical decision of the material type, method, all is sort of housed within the confines of the
It's all on
doctor.
the dentist, and the
Correct.
payers don't know. The payers
Correct.
currently have no idea, but they're also not able to track. I mean, even from a clinical standpoint, we're not seeing how often this one particular type of restoration fails compared
Right.
to another, based upon the different steps that were done. What was the bonding agent? How can we compare those different things? We really don't have that
Yeah.
data right now. And so I see it from both sides.
I get it. Yeah.
I see it from both sides, but hopefully payers will agree to pay for quality restorations.
So with that being
Fingers
said,
crossed.
earlier I
tinfoil
said
hat.
that,
Mhm.
everybody keeps referring to this as granular, which to me is sand in my swim trunks.
Right.
And I was just going to say that all of this is really becoming a pain in my ass. So it really is kind of like sand in my swim trunks. But who do we have to blame for this granular freaking nature of it is, and just out of curiosity, is it, who do you see that's pushing these changes towards this,
This came straight up from the ADA.
okay.
And so this is not payers that are pushing this. This is not coming from the insurance side. This is coming from a clinical data gathering viewpoint, but I think that it's driven by medical. And so, if you do CPT coding or ICD-10 coding at all, I know you guys do sleep medicine and some other things like that, where you'll venture out into that. It's a completely different animal from coding dental. I mean, totally different. And it's the way that it's being done on that side. And more medical procedures are kind of starting to mix with dental procedures. I'll put it that way. So there's a lot of overlap now that there really didn't used to be. And so I believe that ADA is taking their cue from the way that things have been going on the medical side, and they're trying to make those similar changes to the CDT code set. So
tell us about, with that being said, which I'm not excited about, tell us about some other changes coming up in 2023. We talked, or you mentioned a few, and there's one that I really want to ask about, but tell us some changes that you see coming in 2023.
Yeah, you can
be real pertinent for this year.
Yeah, we've got just as an idea about how many codes change over a given year. In 2021, we had 61 changes. Okay. This current year, we were at 46, and coming up for 2023, we have 38 changes. So
Okay.
if you haven't updated your coding resources in a 3-year period, I didn't even talk about the COVID codes and vaccine codes and all that stuff. Altogether, there's 160 changes over that 3-year period. So if you're not staying current, then you're probably using some old codes. You're probably using some deleted codes or codes that have changed in their scope, in their language, how they're supposed to be used. And so you're probably doing some miscoding, and that's going to lead to delays. That's going to lead to denials from the insurers. So coming up in 2023, and we're about to do a 3-part lecture series on this. We've got a 3 practice booster. We've got 3 hour-long sessions that are going to be for CE. So we're going to go into this in a whole lot more depth. But there were 38 changes. Like I said, all the changes this year were substantive changes, which means they weren't editorial in nature. They weren't just some grammar change, change a word here or there. They actually were meaty changes. There were either new codes or there were changes that actually affect the way that you use the code. So big, important changes this time. We've got coming up a whole bunch of new, if you guys are using membranes. Right now, there's a couple of membranes, the 4266, 4267 that you're using currently. That's in the perio section, but you're also using that anywhere that you're using a membrane. You're using those codes. There's one random one that's off an endo, but we're not going to talk about it. But next year, there's going to be codes for those around. They're going to keep those 2. That's going to be for around natural teeth. Then there's going to be 2 new ones for implants, resorbable and non-resorbable. Then there's going to be 2 for a dentulous arch, resorbable and non-resorbable. And then there's another code for the removal. Currently, there's not even a code for taking out a non-resorbable membrane. And so you end up having to recode the same code again for a second step. So that's a change. There's a lot of changes. Have you guys heard of stationary intraoral tomosynthesis?
No.
There are 6 new codes, I believe it is, that are involving this new technology. What this is stationary intraoral tomosynthesis. Tomosynthesis is a type of radiograph that's been used in mammography for a long time, and it is now just got FDA approval. The system is called Portray by Surround Medical out of North Carolina, right there. UNC had a whole lot of stuff to do with it. But essentially, the form factor looks like an X-ray head and an intraoral sensor that you currently have in your office, okay? But the X-ray head has a collimator in it that sends 7 separate beams of X-rays. So they're coming from 7 different directions. And that intraoral sensor can pick that up and create a 3-dimensional intraoral PA or bite wing. So essentially, it's almost like a little bitty baby CBCT. Now, it's not nearly the amount of information that you're getting from a CBCT.
Boy, it limits exposure, though.
That's right. Way less exposure and way
And
less
liability.
Cost. Yeah, way less cost. You're not having to, you can do it in the room, sitting in the chair. So for like an endodontist, no brainer. This is a wonderful, you can, so you'll have slices. It gives you 7 slices basically of the tooth. You can zoom in if you've got overlapping contacts, no problem. You just zoom into a layer where there's no overlapping contacts. You can actually see fractures internally in the tooth. You can zoom past a big buccal amalgam to a point where you can see what's underneath it, And so pretty cool. So that's stationary intraoral tomosynthesis. That's a big change for next year. Also, a materials definition change. I kind of alluded to this earlier. In past years, they had changed the definition of porcelain ceramic to where it was anything greater than 50% inorganic filler, but it had to be pressed, fired, milled, or polished. Those are the four things: pressed, fired, milled, or polished. So it gave you some direction, or gave you some stipulations as to how the thing was fabricated.
That was 2015, 2016. They did that, right?
That's when little lava crowns came out, and you began to be able to do some of those highly filled resin crowns that you could actually code them as a porcelain crown, And so this next year, they're taking away that pressed, fired, milled, and polished. So what this means is that any fabrication method is now okay as long as it meets that greater than 50% filler. Well, I know of at least two companies that this coming year are putting out 3D printed resin.
Their lobbyists did a damn good job.
They did a great job. So, this is going to work. So, and so the materials cost they're estimating are $2 to $3 a unit.
Yep.
To be able to 3D print. So you're going to be able to use the scanner you got, take your digital impression, 3D print a crown, much like you would currently do a Serac type crown or whatever, $2-3 in materials, and you've got a porcelain crown. Or at least you're able to coat it as a porcelain crown. Now, we have yet to see structural integrity. How long does it last? How's the polishability? I don't know. I don't know any answers to that. But as far as from a coating perspective and how you're going to be able to do that, as far as insurance goes, as soon as those materials come out, you're going to be able to print a crown for $2.
I figured that was coming, and you just gave me a huge enlightenment, because I actually talk a lot on hybrid ceramics and stuff like that, and there's the manufacturers all have, I wouldn't say a misunderstanding, but they don't really share with you what the ADA percentage is, and for me, it's been kind of hard to find. You just know that based upon the manufacturer, like for instance, Shofu's material is 61% filled, and it's like, okay, yes, this can be filed as a ceramic. You don't know where that, I never knew where that breaking point is, and I never knew it was pressed, fired, milled, or polished. That's interesting as well too. So that helps me out tremendously. But at this 3D printing thing is interesting, because I don't know that the research is out there yet to validate.
Well, I'm going to jump in because I just interviewed internationally. There's a lot of research. I will link the interview I just did on Formlabs, who is moving in that direction with printed crowns. And it was both with a young doctor who's doing it. She has just 2-year subjective reviews of the crowns that she's done within her practice. And to be fair, Chad, in certain demographics, it's this or no pressed ceramic. I mean, this is a great inexpensive alternative to a composite restoration.
And for inlays, onlays, those types of restorations, I completely,
I just want to see longevity. That's my biggest deal.
The other doctor that I interviewed is a prosthodontist working in a tremendous amount of research in the 3D resin printed crown arena, and she has a ton of data to back it up. So, and she's been moving through this for the last 15 years. And so she's seen the evolution of both milled ceramics and how they've come through the market, and look at lava. I mean, and all the different ones that came through, and then where some of these printed resin, embedded resins are coming through as well. So I will link that because I think it's very relevant for what we're doing. I was just a moderator sitting amongst two people who were using it and learning a tremendous amount about what they're doing. I came in as a skeptic, but I definitely left much more convinced that there is a market share, that this is going to solve a problem. If having to have milled ceramic technology in your practice costs anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000, and you can do it with your $5,000 3D printer, and that allows us to start lowering our costs to patients and moving the needle of also dental services being more accessible. we would be fools not to at least look at what its application is in the dental market.
Yeah. So
Personal opinion.
I don't disagree with that. I just want to see longevity because, I remember some of the failures of the past, and I don't want to see that again. And I want to see a strong bonding protocol, but that's not what this conversation is about. But, I think there's a lot that remains to be seen, but I do know that it's coming on very, very strong.
absolutely, absolutely. And I got to speak. I visited one dental school where literally it was a guy doing table labs for all these different 3D printer companies. He had 20 of them running all at the same time, printing out these different materials. And he kind of had mixed reviews. He had his favorites and he had his, and I'm not going to mention them by name, but he had, some that he liked more than others. And, but I really see a future in it.
100%.
It's going to get better and better and better. We are on the ground floor of this. And so with any technology, as give it some time. Once it's coming into the marketplace full on, more and more experimentation is going to happen. More and more developments are going to happen. It's going to get better and better. And so hopefully this will become a medium that'll be in a whole lot of dental practices going forward. So
it just tells me the power of lobbying, because we know that the 3D printing industry is going to be, it's huge. It's already huge, and it's just growing by the day. But look at how long it took for the milling industry to get this recognition. It was 2015, 2016-ish, around there, when we got the ceramic code. And then all of a sudden, these things are just coming to the forefront, and then boom, all of a sudden we've got the ceramic code for 3D printed, materials. I think that's huge in the power of lobbying. And I like to hear that they're actually listening to, some of the changes that are being suggested.
absolutely.
Okay, Greg, I'm ready. I've got a big question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
So in some states, I want to talk about if you're an in-network provider and you provide a service and that service is not covered by that plan, and then the EOB comes out that I have to, we'll just say me, I have to honor that write-off in order, because I'm a contracted in-network dentist. But my state law states that non-covered services do not have to be, I don't have to honor the write-off. But then there's this whole, a non-covered service, is it a non-reimbursed service or a non-covered service via the contract and how the contract reads? I would love a 36,000-foot view, and then also a ground level view of what application that really looks like for doctors. Because it's heavily contested, and it goes state by state, and nobody really understands, because no one wants to commit insurance fraud. They really don't. They just want to do what's right.
Absolutely. And so there are a lot of factors, my favorite answer to this question is it depends. And I hate that that's the answer, but it truly is, because this is going to be dependent upon a lot of factors. I'm going to tell you about a few of them.
Okay.
First off, are you familiar with fully insured versus self-funded plans?
Yes. But go ahead for our audience. Let's dive in.
So it's usually about a 50-50 mix within your office. There are 42 states currently that have these laws in place about fee capping for non-covered services and things like that. So if you live in one of those 42 states, you're probably sitting there thinking, okay, well, I don't have to worry about fee capping. And that's not true. That only applies to the particular plans that fall under state regulation. And that's only about half your plans. That's about half your patients, probably. There are two types of patients within your office. There is a self-funded plan, and there are fully insured plans. Now, a self-funded plan is a big employer. This is your Google, this is your Bank of America, this is Walmart, this is Amazon. Okay. The pot of money for these self-funded plans, the reason they call it that is the business themselves takes a big pool of money, puts it in a trust fund account. About every 90 days, they'll fund this thing. And then they just hire an insurance company to act as the third-party administrator.
Right.
And so if you look on the back of an insurance card and you see TPA provided by, third-party administration services provided by, whatever, that is probably a self-funded plan that you were dealing with. And they don't have to play by state law rules. They are governed by federal. They fall under ERISA, the Employment Retirement Income Security Act of 1974. And so they're federally regulated. You can't call the state insurance commissioner and fight something about one of these plans. When you have a problem with one of those plans, you need to go to HR of that particular company. That's where you can get motion. Okay. On the flip side, you've got fully insured plans. Now, these are smaller businesses or individuals that maybe directly get insurance from one of these insurance companies. The money comes from the insurance company, from the payment of premiums. And they are usually state regulated. So they have to follow those laws. Okay. So they're going to follow those fee capping laws too. Okay. So that's step one. So any of those self-funded plans, they can kind of do what they want to do. They have 90 days to tell you that they got a claim, but they don't even have a period of time in which they have to pay that claim. There's a lot of things about them that you may not like, honestly. And fully insured plans, they're much more regulated. So you're going to see a lot of that. And those fee capping laws do apply to those. But now there are different definitions, and this goes by state, as to what is considered a non-covered service. Is it non-covered in that there's what's called never ever laws? A lot of states are, if it's a service that they cover, before, while the patient still has benefits, then it's always considered a covered service, and they have the ability to regulate the fee that you can get from that. If it is other states, sometimes if you run out of benefits, then the patient is no longer covered, then you actually can consider those a non-covered service and do things a little differently. Okay. But the first step I like to do is to try for an upgrade. Okay. When you've got one of these particular services that, your lab bill is bigger than the cost of treatment that you're able to provide under this particular plan, and that situation happens. So of course, if it's fee for service, if it's not a patient that's, if they're out of network, whatever, you can charge them whatever you want to, it's not a problem. Okay. If they are in network, okay, there's a few things that you can do. The first thing is to check for upgrades. I want you to call the payer, ask for a provider relations specialist. The normal person that answers the telephone is probably going to not have any idea what it is that you're talking about. Okay. But if you've got a provider relations specialist, they're familiar with your plan, you'll be able to ask them about this. You're going to want to ask if they allow upgraded treatment. You're going to want to get that in writing. From the patient, saying that the patient is willing to pay the difference themselves. And so if they say yes, they do, they allow for upgrades if the patient is willing to pay for the difference themselves. Then you need to record the date, the time, who you spoke with. You need to verify that you can balance bill that patient for the contracted fee. And you should be recording all this. You should be really, making sure, because you don't want this to come back on you. You want to ask how they like it reported. Some payers want you to use a specific procedure code. Some people actually want you to do those types of things as unspecified by report. That way it doesn't get auto adjudicated by accident, automatically.
And it'll just get kicked out anyways.
Right. It'll just kick it out, and it's, and you don't have, all this work that you've done is for naught. So ask which documentation should be there. Ask if the EOB is going to accurately reflect the patient's true responsibility. Some do, some don't. Okay. It's not a thing that some people think about. And then the patient gets this EOB and says, oh, I only owe $4, And so that's not true because it's not what you agreed on. You'll need to be able to tell the patient to ignore that EOB. So write everything down, write the answers given. So discuss everything with the patient, get the patient to sign a form that outlines all the particulars, sign and date, send a copy of that to the payer as an attachment when you submit the claim. Okay. Seems like a lot of process, seems like a lot of stuff. Okay. But that's the best way. Because if the payer says, no, we don't allow for these upgrades or these optional services, okay, you're locked into the contracted fee. If it's a major procedure that you're trying to make happen, like an all-on-4 or some big thing, and the fees are not suitable compensation for the work done and the lab bills, you may want to talk to the patient about temporarily suspending their dental coverage. Talk to them about, hey, call your employer, tell them you want to drop dental for a while. And then you can do what you need to do. And then they can come back and, later on reinstate it. Or you could do an in-house discount plan for them or something like that. There's also this thing, and you guys may have heard about it, called the HITECH form. Y'all familiar with that?
Mm-mm.
The HITECH Act is it's a HIPAA form, basically, that it was originally designed when the legislation came about as a way for patients to protect their right to privacy so that employers wouldn't see embarrassing type procedures. So if you got an HIV test, you didn't want your employer to know, you could sign this HIPAA waiver, okay? And it's under the HITECH Act. And then that way you would not have to submit that to insurance, okay? And so it was a way around submitting something to insurance. There are some dental people who have taken this on as a way to get around their PPO participation, particular things. We do not advise doing this, however. It is legal. It is a way to do it, but patient has to pay for everything absolutely 100% all up front, okay? And the scary thing is that they can rescind the waiver at any time. So what we have seen is dentists doing this big $60,000 procedure, having the patient sign this HITECH waiver. And then once everything is said and done and the work is in the patient's mouth, then the patient rescinds the waiver, sends the information back into the insurer. The insurer says, hey, you have to write the whole thing off.
And they can't a patient can't just request no bill insurance.
No, you can't just request no bill insurance.
Okay.
You are obligated as a contracted provider to honor that contract. I mean, can you, just decide to not pay your car payment, because you choose to? You've entered in this contract with the insurer, and there's not really a way out of that. There's not a form you can sign that gives you complete, freedom to do what you want to do.
I think you bring up interesting cases, though, of high-end cosmetics, all-on-4s. I mean, all these things were never really intended for insurance coverage.
They really weren't. And so, I mean, in those particular cases, if you've got that decision to make that, hey, either I can't do it under this given insurance, there are cases where HITECH has been done and it's worked and it's great. It's fine. We don't know what's going to happen in the future with those. If patients ever rescind it, those records also have to be stored separately. They can't even be seen on an audit. You have to keep those records completely separate, because they're HIPAA. So then you've got HIPAA violations.
Yeah.
And then if it ever does come out, well, you've also violated your contract with the PPO. So then you've got PPO, kicking you out from participation. And there's a whole lot of downside to it. I would rather you approach your patient and say, hey, there's no way I can do this with the given insurance that you have. Okay. Would you be open to going to your employer and dropping dental insurance for a little while? And during this period where you don't have dental insurance, we can do everything cash pay. I can give you a dental in-house discount. I'll throw in if you're worried about your cleanings, I'll throw in your pro fees. I mean, whatever you need to do to make this thing happen. But it's by far the safer way, the way that it's not going to come back to bite you in the butt.
It's a good idea, Greg. I like that.
So that's my 2 cents.
That's the workaround.
That's the workaround. So you can't just say, I don't want to submit this to insurance. It doesn't work that way. You're contractually obligated. Anything that you charge to a patient must be, under most plans, you got to read the language. Every plan is different. And that's a whole other conversation. The plan document versus the plan summary. Plan document, if you can get your hands on that thing, that actually shows how it's being adjudicated at the insurance company, what rules they're going by, and what rules that you're actually sticking to. And it's different for every plan. And so that's a big 200-page document. That's not the thing that you get when you sign up.
Right.
And it can only be gotten by a patient. That's a nice caveat. The only reason we can get a hold of it is because of Consumer Protection Act stuff. The patients are able to get a copy of how they adjudicate plans, but a dentist is not, even though we're in contractual relationship with the payers. So, but it's different for every plan. So, like I said, back to the Blue Crown thing. Whatever you sign up for, whatever you agree to is what you're going to end up having to do. So there are some plans that say, yeah, we'll pay for this, and others that say that a core buildup is never covered because it's an integral part of the crown. There are plans out there that say that.
Well, Greg,
I
think that we could probably spend 3 hours on this.
We could.
Unfortunately, we only have 1 hour, so we're going to have to close it out. But would you be willing to come back? Maybe closer?
Always, man. Yeah. Always.
We would love to have you back, because there's so much. And, I'm also sensing that there may be an opportunity for a webinar through Dinks on dental coding, because I think that would be fantastic too. And we'd love to have you do that. But will you be in Chicago this year at Midwinter?
Not for Midwinter. Now my partner, Dr. Jim Marino, will be there. He's at Chicago Midwinter. And so if you want to look him up, he's with Practice. He's actually the CEO of Practice Booster now.
Okay.
And he would love to meet with you for whatever, but I will not be there personally.
All right. Well, good. Well, maybe next time I'm in Tennessee, we'll hook up.
Yeah. You down here in Lookout Mountain, you're a rock's throw from me. So
yeah. So
look me up next time.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here with us. And we'll be in touch. We'll get you back. We'd love to have you back.
Thanks, man. I enjoyed doing it. And any further questions, you can find us at practicebooster.com. Oh, did you put up information about
I posted it. It's in the comments.
A 14-day test drive of Practice Booster online. So that's where we have all our coding resources. The Code Advisor is there, which you guys can try out for a couple of weeks, see how you like that. The Insurance Solutions newsletter, which I'm the editor of, it's got all the back issues on there. There's a lot of other cool stuff, so you can get on there and poke around. But you can reach me there. It's greg@practicebooster.com. If anybody wants to email me, I'm happy to.
That's a phenomenal deal, because it's such a resource.
It really is. And, we'll post it separately tomorrow as well. But it's in the comments tonight. Thank you so much for doing that.
Perfect, man. Great talking to you guys.
Thank you
too.
So much.
We'll talk soon, Greg.
All right, man.
Class of 99. Stay strong, man.
All right. We'll do.
Take care. All right. So, hey, real quick, we're going to close out. We're late. I apologize, but it was so good. We couldn't stop Greg.
Where are you going to be this weekend? Tell everybody.
I'm going to be at the LA Dental Symposium with Dr. Jeff Horowitz, Dr. Abdi Samani, and so many fantastic educators. I'm really nerding out because I will hopefully get to shake hands with Dr. Pascal Monnier. And, There will be Merdad will be there. Sam Alawi will be there. It's just an incredible
Who's who?
incredible lineup. Yeah. And so I'm just going to be a fly on the wall with Horowitz. And, that's always fun anyways. Our good friend, Michelle Petrie from GC will be there. Pam from Dental Economics will be there. So it'll be a lot of fun. Just
I'm jealous.
Really good time. And so I'm sure you'll see some live antics from,
I really hope so,
from the LA Dental Symposium. I want to thank our sponsor, Q Optics. I want to share with everybody, once again, like Greg said, there is a code. Well, it's actually a username and password for a 14-day test drive of Practice Booster's online services. Check it out, folks. I'll post that separately tomorrow, but it's in the comments below this. Jeff, we kind of missed you, but not really.
Hey, Chad, I'm just going to tell you, we can't disclose everything yet, but the next 2 months lineup
is freaking fantastic.
It's lit. Yeah. And there's some new format stuff coming that we haven't done yet that it's going to be good.
Yeah. And I tell you what, if the next 2 months are anything like tonight, you're in for a treat. So
I tell you,
thank you all very much. Catch us on YouTube, catch us on our podcast, because if you haven't listened to our podcast, you need to listen to our podcast. And if you haven't subscribed to YouTube, subscribe to YouTube so you can listen to us or you can watch us, whatever you want to do, but you better be getting your info somehow because we are in the know. Have a great evening.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
And that wraps up another podcast for Dentists in the Know. On behalf of Dr. Jennifer Bell, Dr. Chad Duplantis, and myself, remember that we've got a great profession, so let's make it a great day, Dinks.